Hello, my name is Josh, and this is my Roblox game, Jump Tower, also known as Must Go Up. It's been through 10 different names. I'm mostly going to be focusing on the code in this video, but I just want to show what the game looks like for context, so you know what's going on when I am describing things. There's many factors you have to take into consideration when making games on Roblox, especially because this is all multiplayer. There's no one else here right now, but you have to consider netcode for everything, as everything is shared between players. So let's jump into the code. So starting off, let's jump into the most interesting parts of the code first, starting with the controls, and then we'll do the major movement systems. Effectively, here's what the controls look like. How programming here works is you have split between client, server, and shared between them in these sets of controllers. So these ones in particular are sitting only on the client side. So we can set up our controls, and these will also work on mobile too. And I'll show what that looks like later, but just know that there's a set of buttons on mobile that show on the screen that will work for mobile users. So these are immediately connected to our player movement controller, which has all of the interesting stuff in our code for the most part. So how we handle player movement in this is very different than default Roblox movement. How it works in default is you control with a left stick and a right stick. One moves the camera, one moves the player, and it's a 3D game, right? However, as you saw in ours, we are strictly 2D. We can move left, right, we can do up, down, we can do a jump, and that's it, right? So we have to do all of that ourselves, and moreover, we need to do our physics simulation ourselves because we have special needs too. For example, due to how this game is designed, as you saw there, when you fall, you need to go into that sort of dropped lunge pose. If you do a long fall, when you hit a wall, you bounce off like this, and you go into a free fall. When you walk off an edge, you walk into a fall also. And there's animations tied to all of these, and we need to handle it in particular, because none of this is done by the default game, so we need to do it ourselves. How I chose to handle this is through a series of ray casting. Effectively, we have these 4 functions here. What these do in the end is we'll shoot out a ray from 2 corners on our character. And this causes issues. We could add more if we have specific geometry, but I haven't run into that issue. And we shoot out 2 raycasts from our character, and if it runs into a physical object, then we will, if we hit it in our next frame, depending on our speed, then we will bounce off of it and go into a different state or something. This heartbeat function is, effectively think of it as the tick for our player. And we have this pretty gross looking function, which is our state machine of, are we going left? Are we going right? Are we falling? Are we jumping previously? What's our speed look like? And so on. And we manage our body position and route into what could be going on. So for example, if we're grounded, if we're putting in right and we're not putting in left, and we've already checked previously that we are grounded and we're not jumping and we're not pressing down, we're not pressing up, and we're not falling already, then we can walk, for example. If we're doing nothing, handle idle, right? So effectively, this is our main control loop that goes into everything right here. How the controls work is sort of strange because of special needs, but effectively, all that our controls that come in do is they set our input state, this player state, input state, to be true, false for this thing, since you can be pressing multiple buttons at the same time. This was the best solution that I found for this. I think that gives the general gist for this code. There's other things that you can look into here, such as, for example, how the airborne works. It's pretty complicated, but for the most part, we do the same thing as we saw down here where we're raycasting. We're just implementing these raycastings. And we also implement some gravity, we implement some acceleration, and we check this on each tick. Jumping as well. This is just included in more game design than anything else. So here's our 2D camera controller, and it ends up being very simple. So as you saw in the video, our camera is pinned to the side. It's not a free cam following the player. So we'll set that up ourselves too. It actually ends up being very simple. We're just based on check where the player is, We can decide with some concept here how wide we want it to be, but we can check where the player is. And we have a camera very far away, very zoomed in to give it this 2D-ish appearance. And then whenever the player gets too far away out of the side, then we'll just budge over the camera by some amount of width points, right? So some amount of physical space. So I think that's the general most interesting parts of the client side. We can jump into GUI also, but I think I'll just show you what it looks like. It's very simple. There's these GUI elements that appear on the screen for players. And again, these are client side only. You can click on them and they'll give you some text about something. So you can run into items in the game and you can click on them. We can click on this radio and it gives you some more information about it. So now let's jump over to the server side of things to see how it's shared between players. What I will do is I will pull up this in developer mode so you can see what it looks like when you have two people on the same screen. The most important part is we are copying our mirrored state that comes from the client. So all movement, so on, movement, positioning, rotation is handled by the client, and we simply mirror it over to the server, and then this is passed on to the other players. This is questionably a bad choice. I don't think it would work well in other games because it's very easy to cheat, right? So for example, if you wanted, you can just look into the code, make yourself fly around or whatever, break all the stuff. Having the movement handled on the client side is much, much smoother. And if we clone it over to the server and then we can do some checking, such as, oh, is this player cheating? And then, ban them or whatever, works much better. We definitely do not want to have all the physics calculations on the server side as the player latency is horrible. But yes, effectively all that we do is we bring in our player state, which is this mirrored state, which was built in our client. We send it over, and then we will update the character model and all of its children to what was handed in. And then this is what's seen by the other players. There's some other things included in here, such as animations. Animations are handled on the server side. So these have a mild delay, but it's not so bad. And then there's a few other extra things, such as sounds. So sounds handled by the server as well. And this is the exact same idea. There's some elements that just need to be owned by the server, then they can be called by the player too. And these are immediately propagated by the player instance, but they just need to be owned by the server. The final thing that there is here is there are some NPCs you can run into, such as you saw previously, that radio counts as an NPC, and it's just a physical object in the environment that has some text attached to it, effectively. There's some delays. There's not that many, but it gives some flavor to the world. So that's about it. If you'd like to check out this game, it's called Must Go Up by Pearlforge Games. You can check it out. Doesn't have that many plays, but that's okay. And yeah, thank you for your time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.